The long-awaited COVID-19 relief package is here. So what's in it? What does it mean for you? And why the heck did this take so long? Friends, it's time to hold the line.
We've agreed to a package of nearly $900 billion. It is packed with targeted policies that help struggling Americans who've already waited entirely too long.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. That was Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell celebrating an agreement by congressional leaders on COVID relief, a bill that comes after almost 9 months of pushback and back and forth from Democrats and Republicans. And there was an original $2.2 trillion stimulus package that was already passed back in March. According to reports, the $900 billion package will include, among other things, $600 direct payments and checks for every adult and child for those earning up to $75,000. It extends enhanced unemployment benefits for jobless workers who will receive up to $300 per week through mid-March, and a new round of Paycheck Protection Program loans. The package also includes aid for small businesses and money to purchase and distribute vaccines. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were quick to hail the breakthrough, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Our purpose has always been to crush the virus, to put money in the pockets of the American people, which we do in this legislation. As we see food lines all over the country, it was our legislation that had the initiatives for food, for nutrition, for our children in school and our seniors, as well as America's working families.
That's right, crush the virus, feed the children, save the working families. That seems like pretty important stuff, right? We could all agree on that. So why did this take so long? Why did the PPP program run out and there was nothing for months? Why were thousands, tens of thousands of American businesses, millions of American workers left high and dry when we all know the federal government should have been taking actions all along to help them, because it is the government, it is mandates, it is orders from on high and all the way down to the state and local level that shut down businesses, that cause these economic collapses. So shouldn't the government step in and do something? We all know what happened here. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are what happened. Here is Pelosi admitting as much in one of her unintentional, candid moments back on the 4th of December. Play it.
Not to accept half of a loaf months ago when you said, I'm not going to accept half a loaf.
Look, I'm going to tell you something.
Now,
Don't characterize what we did before as a mistake, as a preface to your question, if you want an answer. That was not a mistake. It was a decision, and it has taken us to a place where we can do the right thing without other, shall we say, considerations in the legislation that we don't want.
Yeah, that's right. Now they're in a new place. Why are they in a new place? Oh, because they have Biden now. That's the whole difference. So the same suffering was going on, the same urgency, the same needs of the American people that should have been met, but they wanted maximum. Pelosi wanted maximum damage, maximum anxiety, fear, despair, all of that, so that the American people would go into the election and say to themselves, maybe I just want to change. Now, not all of us did, obviously, but for a lot of Americans, they may have figured anything has to be better than whatever we're going through. That was the gamble that Pelosi made. So while she talks about the children and families and working people, Nancy Pelosi, who lives in a mansion in San Francisco and has multiple super expensive refrigerators full of artisan ice cream that she's happy to show you on a late night TV show while everyone else across the country is wondering how they're going to put food on the table, right? Nancy Pelosi's out there pretending that she's the great hero for the very people that she made suffer. And she made them suffer so that she could retain control, and the Democrat Party could, in the House of Representatives, so she could be Speaker of the House and so that Joe Biden could win. And this is a reminder that the elites have not been suffering like the rest of the American people. For many Democrats who are big believers in mask up, shut up, social distance, don't see anyone, hide under your bed, just listen to the science. Pelosi's been repeating that mantra recently. What does that mean? Get ready, I should note, for Joe Biden to come into office and all of a sudden the media will be saying, Well, turns out that it's going to take more time than we thought for Joe to just start all the healing. Yeah, you mean he doesn't have some brilliant plan? Joe Biden doesn't have some brilliant plan to fix everything? This is not a shock to anyone with an IQ above a toaster, but then there's the American media, full of frauds and no shortage of imbeciles either. And they tell us that this is all going to make everything so much better. That now that Nancy Pelosi is going to be in a position again where she'll actually allow Congress to do its job, we're supposed to be what exactly? Thankful here? It is the people like Nancy Pelosi and the Democrat Party, and yes, even some Republicans, who have never missed a paycheck, haven't missed a meal, nothing has changed really in their lives except they have to do less commuting, really. It is those people who are the biggest advocates for the continued shutdown of restaurants, the hospitality industry, for all of these petty tyranny moves. Not just the social distancing, masking mantra that we've all heard so many times now. We go to sleep at night just hearing these voices in our heads about social distancing and washing your hands and all the rest of it. But even more than that now, they add rules that no sane person could think will do anything. In New York City most recently, they said you couldn't use indoor bathrooms while doing outdoor dining, even one at a time. They had to walk that one back because they didn't want things to get even messier on the New York City streets. How much is too much? When do we finally hold accountable people like Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats around her who enabled the hostage taking, because that's exactly what it was, the taking of the American people as a hostage here for political power and for their own reasons of expediency. It was never about helping you and me and everybody else. It was about helping themselves at our expense. And remember, the vaccine is going to help with this situation, but the elites like Nancy Pelosi, they're not going to want to give up power. You've seen this story out of the UK about a new strain. Just wait until there are some major COVID-19 mutations. Pelosi and all the rest of them love the idea that they can be in charge of so much of the economy and our day-to-day lives. And they'll use this framework of the everlasting emergency, the special authority they've taken upon themselves, not in the Constitution, right? You look at these governors, you look at the way the Democratic Party is exceeding at various levels their mandate to govern in order to just be dictators, to tell you what you can and can't do every day. Nancy Pelosi will use that power going forward. The Democrats will leverage this constant emergency for climate change, for immigration, for any number of things. And all the while, they'll tell you, we're doing this for your benefit. We're doing this to help workers and families and children. Just remember, when it really mattered, this summer, Nancy Pelosi decided they suffer. They go bankrupt. Their businesses go under. They can't put food on the table. Go stand in a food line, Pelosi tells you. Go stand and wait for a food bank to open up to feed your family because Nancy had bigger, more important strategic goals. Not for America, for herself and her party. All right, we'll have more on this after the break with the host of I'm Right here on the First TV, of course, my man Jesse Kelly. Stay with us. I got a crash course in home title theft recently, and this is a crime you better take action against today because if you don't prepare, it can ruin you financially. Here's how the crime happens. The legal titles to our homes are kept online where they can be hacked. A cyber thief finds your home's title, forges your signature on a quitclaim deed stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home until your equity is gone. You won't know about this until the collection calls pour in. You're not protected by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. Home Title Lock, however, protects you. And in the unlikely event you become a victim of home title theft while a member, Home Title Lock will spend up to $250,000 in legal fees to help restore your home's title. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then use code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. Again, code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. Take action today. Don't wait until it's too late. Take action with Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com.
When we get this done, Congress will not deserve any special praise, not with this relief having waited until late December, and not with some of our Democratic colleagues openly saying the reason they finally changed their tune was they finally got a president-elect of their own party.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell blaming Democrats for the COVID relief bill delay. For more on what we can expect from the stimulus package, let's bring in Jesse Kelly, host of I'm Right with Jesse Kelly, which is right here on The First, a great show. And apparently we're rummaging through each other's laundry baskets again because we're wearing the same thing on air. But Jesse, I got to tell you, there is nothing to celebrate here with the COVID relief bill in the sense that Pelosi, you know, I got angry about it. I'm still angry about it. She took the American people hostage. People are suffering. One, she doesn't care. And two, she got what she wanted. This was used as leverage against Trump, and that's all that really mattered to her. So those of us who were sitting there saying, ha ha, look at her, we all have exposed her for a fraud. Who didn't know she was a fraud beforehand? She views this as a win.
Of course. They all have since the beginning of this whole thing. And you know what's wild about this, Buck? And we're just now learning, of course, it's going to pass before we learn everything that's in it. There's foreign aid for Venezuela in the stimulus bill. I mean, it's just full of crap. Right?
$200 million for the Palestinian Authority.
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
I've got people that live on my block whose restaurants, whose businesses are going under, but we had to wait to make sure we send $250 million to the Palestinian Authority, among many other places around the world, as you point out, that are getting foreign aid. I mean, it just shows, look, beating up on Congress is easy to do in general terms, but I think everyone needs to understand that Pelosi, she's an ignoramus, but she's cunning and ruthless, and she got her way on this one in the sense that it wasn't about helping people, ever. It was about using this as a weapon against Trump. But all right, you and I both know that. I now want to ask you about, Jesse, the other thing where you're one of the few who's taken as much heat as I have for being out there and saying, hey guys, they're lying to you about these lockdowns. They're lying to you about how well it's working. Right? They say, it works. Okay, how well? What's the cost? How long do we do it for? It's not as easy as just making a binary statement. Now the UK finds out they've got a new mutation of COVID-19. They say it's behind rapid spread in London. I tweeted out, people can check my Twitter, 2 days ago, I said, I know the vaccine's great, it's gonna help a lot of people, but if you think they're gonna give you back your freedom, just wait until the mutations. This is a mutation, Jesse, and I think it's unfortunately the first of many.
Oh, of course it's the first of many. And look, let's be clear about something. Viruses do mutate. That's not abnormal. It's going to mutate. But the point of it is, they're never going, if you're saying the vaccine's going to end the virus, you have to understand this. And I don't want you to be a jaded cynic like you and I, but if you're saying the virus is going to end, or the vaccine's going to end the virus, what you're saying is, my mayor, my governor is going to wake up one day and be totally done with all the newfound power he has. Because this is a lifelong goober who's never talked to a pretty girl until he was in politics and famous. And all of a sudden now he's not only important, he got a pretty wife under his arm, and he has the power to point to businesses and you close and you shut down and you're done and you're done. And what you're saying is, if you believe the vaccine ends all this, you're saying that guy wakes up one day and says, you know, I'm done with all this power. I'm actually sick of it. I want to go back to the way things were. It's never happened, and it's not going to happen. And I have even worse news, Buck. This coronavirus bill, this isn't the last one of these we're going to see either, with all the pork and crap in it, because they know this is a tried and true formula now. Hold the American people hostage till they're screaming, till the economy's in the toilet. Half the country's scared of corona. The other half is scared of economic collapse. You just wait until they're desperate and pass some bill with a bunch of crap in it and say it's coronavirus relief. They're going to pass 5 more of these things. You watch.
And we're going to do more of these restrictions too. The UK now has, they're banning flights from, we have a list of countries here people can see. So countries that have bans and restrictions on UK travelers, I mean, there's too many to name. There's a ton of them, dozens of them right now. Very large countries around the world. And Jesse, this is fascinating to me. We have reached a point now where it is a crime to notice and say what is obvious, or at least it's a social crime, right? Your social media companies will kick you off of their platforms. People will call you a hateful monster just for saying things like, only with lockdowns is it a success when they're always followed by additional lockdowns. Why is it that we do this phased thing when the phasing doesn't actually stop anything, which is obvious to everybody now who's actually looking at the trajectories of these viruses, and all it takes is more and more and more, and by the time they get to the point where they're finally at the end of their most draconian restrictions, it's been 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and yes, then the virus starts to recede and they say, ha-ha, we figured it out. We crushed the virus. That's actually what Pelosi said today.
They never admit they're wrong. And look, don't take that as a small thing either. A lot of this, like Birx, we just saw Birx, the new controversy out when she was all over TV. She's been all over TV for a year, but she was just recently all over TV. Don't travel for Thanksgiving. If you traveled for Thanksgiving, just assume you were infected. Don't travel, don't travel, don't travel. And she's wearing a mask in the TV interviews. And boom, wake up this morning to a headline: Birx traveled for Thanksgiving to one of her vacation homes where she hung out with 3 generations of her family. One, this is not a lady who's at all concerned about coronavirus. She's not. I don't care what she's told you. She doesn't feel like she's in any danger or her family's in any danger. That's one. Two, this is not someone who could admit she's wrong. I mean,
Jesse,
think about what that would take. Think if we had people who just could step up, Buck, and say, hey, I guess the lockdowns didn't work. I guess this thing isn't quite as bad as I made it out to be. That's on me.
Jesse, I do have to throw a fact check at you, though, because she gave a very reasonable explanation. It's not that she wanted to spend Thanksgiving with her relatives. She claimed that she was out there to help get a house ready for sale, one of her several houses. So it was really a business venture. So I think you could say that this may be, it's essential, Jesse. She's an essential worker at her own country house with 3 generations of her family. So I want to make sure we give her due on that one.
Oh, of course. And they all do the same thing. Remember when Newsom got busted? He banned indoor dining, and like 5.5 seconds later, he gets busted with a 20-person no mask party inside of a restaurant. He gets up and gives some half-hearted apology, and during the apology, he says something like, well, the guys had it planned for a long time, and I showed up, and I should have left, but I didn't know how many people were going to be there. It's just, nobody can ever just say, that's on me. I was wrong. They always just treat people like they're idiots. And let's be honest, until we start rebelling against the restrictions, we are idiots. We deserve this.
There are 2 areas where I never get satisfactory responses from the people that I know, and there are many of them who are big lockdown and Fauci advocates. I mean, Fauci is a cult now. I mean, there's a cult of Fauci. It's like "In Fauci we trust" should be the new slogan of the United States government and the Democrat Party, because that's what they really think. That's what they really believe. But you always see, Jesse, there's no willingness to calibrate in a way where they will not admit that they were wrong, and they will continue to be hypocritical about this. And that's really all you have to know. Because if they were so worried about this virus killing them and their family members, they would act differently than they do, and they would admit when they're wrong about certain aspects of this. They clearly have been. They won't say it. They won't do it.
They won't say, they can't say it. And look, you just pointed it out, and it's 100% true. It's not that they're hypocrites. They are hypocrites, of course. It's that they're genuinely, when it comes down to it, not concerned about coronavirus. They're not concerned about getting it. They're not concerned about spreading it. They're not concerned about their loved ones getting it. If they were genuinely concerned, this is not Democrat or Republican. If they were genuinely worried about coronavirus, all these politicians and doctors wouldn't constantly be getting busted violating the rules they tell you to follow. If they really thought getting together for Thanksgiving was a danger, they wouldn't get together for Thanksgiving. If they thought getting a haircut was a danger, they wouldn't be getting their haircut. They don't think this thing is that serious. That's the truth.
If I were a public health official, Jesse, and there was an Ebola outbreak, I can assure you, not only would I be telling everybody else to avoid anybody that has the symptoms of Ebola, I would avoid them as well. Something's up here.
Yeah, please. Yeah, exactly. Please, I don't want my lungs melted. We're not going to get together for Thanksgiving this year. It's just that simple. If they were worried, they wouldn't be doing it. They're not worried, but they want you and me worried so they can continue to be on TV and be a celebrity and have all this power. In the meantime, America's getting screwed.
Jesse Kelly, everybody. I'm Right with Jesse Kelly. Go check it out. Jesse, thank you for your time, buddy.
See you, boss.
Authorities are pointing the finger at Russia after reports surfaced that the U.S. was hit by a massive cyber attack. This affected both government agencies and the private sector. More on what we know in detail in tonight's Buck Brief. These days, being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in today is anything but predictable. We could all benefit from something reliable right about now. Well, what could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver you can hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now and learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Don't wait for inflation to kick in. Don't wait for another economic crisis or to see if the value of the dollar, the dollars you have in your bank account right now, if they go down. Protect yourself against this uncertain economic future that we all share. Take action. Call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. This past week, the American people became aware of a massive act of cyber warfare against our nation. We learned that back in March, a coordinated and sophisticated mass hacking of both the public and private sector was carried out by a Russian hacking group known as COUNSEL, which is backed by their Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR of Russia. This is just the latest in a string of foreign cyber attacks on our nation's critical digital infrastructure. The attack was principally focused on SolarWinds, Microsoft, and Cisco, all of whom have software that is used across the federal government and the private sector. Intelligence officials are still putting together the pieces of what happened and the full scope of this attack. Let's examine all of it on today's Buck Brief. Now let's be clear. The single biggest national security threat the United States faces is China, but that doesn't mean that there aren't foreign actors who are also major problems for us and have areas of specific competency that might even exceed what the Chinese Communist Party can bring to bear. If you're looking at overall influence operations, as we've discussed here on the show, meaning pushing politics in a certain direction, getting media companies, getting the NBA, among many others, to bow to the dictates of Beijing, nobody can come toe-to-toe with China on that one. They are by far the most powerful, the most influential. But specifically on the topic of cyber, the Russians are somewhat in a class by themselves. They have a particularly adept cyber hacking crew, and part of this is the institutional knowledge they carried over perhaps from their earlier days of the Soviet Union, where they had massive numbers of engineers and computer scientists being trained, and also because Russia has been fertile ground for hackers for a long time, because as long as it's external, the Internal Security Service, the FSB, won't do very much about it. Here you have a chart of hacking speed by country, by foreign adversary. You see this one. You've got Russia, North Korea, and China. As you can see here, Russia is faster than the others. I mean, the Russian government has a lot of capability in this realm. North Korea has been focused on this for a long time because they're so cut off from the rest of the world that a lot of the other influence operations and even espionage plays out there are much more complicated because North Korea doesn't even have diplomatic relations with much of the world. So that's why you have Russia with an advantage here. And of course, China has tremendous resources, but the skill of their hackers, based on what we've already seen, may not quite measure up to what you have in Russia. Now, we're splitting hairs here a little bit. The Russians and the Chinese have a lot of similar capabilities, and the Chinese certainly have greater resources. But if you're just looking at the sophistication and hacking skill, especially against U.S. machines and networks, the Russians still seem to be a little bit out ahead. And in fact, when looking at charts of foreign adversaries and which ones are most likely, you can see here, you have the influence operations. What tactics will nation-state adversaries use to manipulate the 2018 elections? People said influence operations, and then cyber espionage is very high. And Russia, in many of these categories, remains the biggest threat. What nation-state poses the greatest cyber threat to U.S. elections? Now, some of this, because 81% of these cyber experts all said that it's Russia, some of this I do believe is a carryover, a holdover from 4 years of Russia hysteria. And I think there's an argument to be made, and this comes from people I know inside the intelligence and security sector, that the Chinese are actually so much better at this in some capacity and are so much more able to do overt operations to get information, to do overt operations to move the foreign policy needle in their direction, that we overemphasize Russia's nefarious computer activities and abilities at the expense of understanding how much of what China is doing are we even catching in the first place? Are they intruding on systems and getting out of systems before we even know? So a lot of this operates in this murky space where we have to look at what we know and what's being reported on over time And there's certainly a ton of it that's going to be classified. You're not going to have a lot of access to. But Russia is still considerable. Do you remember the guy who said the election was just spot on, fantastic from a foreign influence perspective? This guy, he's the ex-CISA chief, Chris Krebs. Here's what he said about the SolarWinds hack when this came out. Play it.
So the way I look at it is, yeah, it happened on my watch at CISA, and we missed it. A bunch of other folks missed it. But there is work that we have to do now going forward to make sure, A, we get past this, that we get the Russians out of the networks, but B, that it never happens again. And we really need congressional support. We need the resources. We need the authorities to be able to make sure that, again, this doesn't happen again. But going back to the beginning, the Russians are exceptionally good at this sort of work, and they found a seam in our defenses.
And they exploited it. To the tune of what? We should note that this was not just a couple of places. This wasn't a few phishing emails that got access into individual company systems. The Hill reports that close to 200 organizations have been hacked. Now, a lot of this is based upon private sector cyber intelligence agencies doing analysis. What the government knows is going to be even in excess of this. As you know, we have Cyber Command. There's a tremendous amount of resources put into figuring out not only how to stop situations like this, but then how to address them, how to make sure that once they've infiltrated, you can get them out of your systems entirely. And clearly this is a major vulnerability. And going forward, cyber is going to be one of the primary battlefields with which the United States government has to deal with foreign adversaries. Russia's already very adept, but China is right behind them. And when you look at aggregate resources and everything they can bring to bear, you'll see soon the Chinese Communist Party is engaged in a whole lot of hacking that we haven't even heard about yet. Calls for Congressman Eric Swalwell to resign from the House Intelligence Committee are growing as new details emerge about his relationship with a suspected Chinese spy. More on that with CEO of American Majority Ned Ryun right after the break. Attention, fellow patriots. MAGA CBD is a revolutionary American-made product that's safe for work. It's THC-free and features patented NASA technology. So it's pretty much the highest quality CBD oil you'll get anywhere on the market. Dedicated to providing the purest, most effective products you can get, MAGA CBD provides third-party testing results from industry-leading experts. MAGA CBD is 100% committed to customer satisfaction and product quality. Best of all, 10% of proceeds benefit veterans and first responders. Personally, MAGA CBD has really helped me sleep through the night, which is something I used to struggle with a lot. You can really feel and taste the difference with their apple pie flavored oil. What CBD product in the market could be more American? MAGA, NASA, apple pie. It's America at its finest. For your CBD needs, look no further than MAGA CBD. Learn more and order today at magacbd.org and save 10% with promo code BUCK. That's magacbd.org, promo code BUCK. Welcome back. A new briefing from the FBI sparking calls from a minority leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, to remove Congressman Eric Swalwell from the Intelligence Committee over his ties to a suspected Chinese spy. Here's what McCarthy took away from that briefing.
The one answer that I got out of that briefing was there is no way Eric Swalwell should continue to serve on the Intel Committee. That is why today, Maria, what I'm going to request that every single member on the House Intelligence Committee gets the exact same briefing from the FBI that I did. Because if this individual is sitting on this committee, Eric Swalwell, they've got to know the background of what has gone on.
Joining me now to talk about this, Ned Ryun, CEO of American Majority. Ned is a buddy of ours. Ned, great to see you, man. How you doing?
Good to be with you, Buck. No, interesting times we live in.
That's for sure. Tell me what you think about these calls for Swalwell to step down. Because here's the thing. He's not going to step down. You and I know that, right? Swalwell's not going to step down. So we can sort of skip the high dudgeon and get all upset about it. But at the end of the day, Swalwell's going to ride this thing out as long as he can. But that doesn't mean we can't fight for more answers. What do you think should be done here? What's really going on?
Well, I think McCarthy's got the right approach. Like every member of the Intel Committee needs to have the same briefing that he got to understand probably how compromised Swalwell is by China. And my conclusion in all this, just watching what's been taking place with Swalwell and I would say not a suspected, but an actual Chinese spy, I think the Democratic Party has been completely corrupted and compromised by China from Swalwell to Biden, which is deeply, deeply troubling. It should be deeply troubling to every American because Russia's a problem. China's a true threat. China is a true threat to our standing in the world on the global stage, economically, but also the implications not only for America, but for the rest of the free world. We are the only power that has the ability to confront China's imperial ambitions. And if we have people like Swalwell on Intel and Biden in the White House, our ability to forcefully confront China is going to be mitigated. That should trouble all of us.
And I think it's important for everyone to keep in mind, Ned, that these are influence operations. So it's not just a question of the possibility. And I should say there's no proof yet. We're not going to be Democrats and just say things that are wildly unsupported like they did with Russia collusion. There's no proof that's yet been presented that Eric Swalwell violated any classified protocols. We don't know. That has not yet been alleged. Correct. We don't know yet. But we do know that he had to get a defensive briefing from the FBI for his relationship with a Chinese spy. And that alone, I mean, when you look at the infiltration, I feel like this case really becomes a canary in the coal mine for the whole country. This isn't just a partisan issue of how far and wide and really intricate and deliberate these Chinese influence operations, where they're merely getting people to establish relationships with the idea that they can leverage that personal connection to push for more pro-Chinese CCP policy down the line.
Yeah, no, and I think Daniel Hoffman made this point on Fox News that this is not one of just a couple. He thinks it's one of thousands. And my question is, in all of this is, we know that probably the likelihood of Swalwell is not the only one in Congress that has some of these issues. The question is, how many state and local officials have the same problem? How many heads or senior management institutions have the same problem? Hoffman thinks it was thousands. I would actually tend to agree with him that it's thousands in various places of authority across the country. And again, it's like we've been lulled to sleep by China, and we're now waking up to the fact that I think we're behind the 8 ball with them. And that's why Donald Trump was such a threat to them. I mean, really, Donald Trump was one of the first ones, Republican or Democrat, to be honest, that actually stood up and said, hey, China is a real threat to our future as a leader in the world. And now with his loss, Biden looks like likely win, all of this taking place. I sure as heck hope the American people wake up before it's too late, because I think a lot of people in very powerful positions, not only inside of our government, but various institutions, have been compromised on this issue.
And we already know there's another important high-level possible compromise to talk about involving the president-elect's son, Joe Biden. Here is what the White House, the incoming White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, says about what kind of questions will be allowable. Play it.
No decision has been made about who he's going to nominate to be the Attorney General. He's been emphatic that that person will oversee an independent department. He will not be discussing an investigation of his son with any Attorney General candidates. He will not be discussing it with anyone he is considering for the role, and he will not be discussing it with a future Attorney General.
So he's not allowed to go there, he says. I have a feeling.
Oh, sure.
I have a feeling, Ned, that any incoming attorney general under a Biden administration would know you come at Hunter at your peril.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you actually believe what she had to say, well, I remind people again, Joe lied to the American people when he said he had never had a conversation with Hunter about any of his foreign business dealings. And according to some obviously very strong witnesses, he actually did have those conversations. So if you believe that lie, you're going to believe this lie. And I would say if you believe this, you also believe that Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch only talked about golf and grandkids that day on the tarmac. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think the AG, whoever Biden's AG is, understands there's no way in heck they're going to lift the lid on this Hunter Biden situation, because I'm convinced, along with others, that ultimately Hunter Biden leads back to Joe Biden. It wasn't a Hunter Biden scandal. It was the Joe Biden scandal. No AG inside of a Biden administration is ever going to lift the lid on this because of where it might actually lead.
You know, today the Attorney General said about the Hunter Biden issue and the possibility of a special counsel the following. Let's play it for the audience.
Do you believe there should be a special counsel appointed to investigate the allegations against Hunter Biden?
I think to the extent that there's an investigation, I think that it's being handled responsibly and professionally. currently within the department, and to this point, I have not seen a reason to appoint a special counsel, and I have no plan to do so before I leave.
I got to tell you, BARR is getting a lot of criticism from the right these days. I will tell you just up front, Ned, I think you probably already know this, but I think AG BARR has actually done a very good job. I think he's been handling multiple crises at the same time. That all said, what do you make either of the AG, and I'm open to alternative points of view on this one in general, but also more specifically on the special counsel issue here with Hunter Biden?
Well, I'd probably take a little bit of different approach than you, Buck. I have to admit, for a while there, I really thought that AG BARR was one of the best decisions that Donald Trump had made. And then all of a sudden he went AWOL middle of September after he said on an interview that universal mail-in fraud, all of this is a real serious problem. The Durham incident, of course, he made Durham special counsel. I'm actually a little troubled by some of what Bill Barr has done in not actually pursuing some of this for fear that it'll be electoral interference, right? For some of this stuff taking place before the election. Well, by not actually pursuing it before the election, I felt that was electoral interference. And if we get another Republican inside the White House, if we want to see real reform at the DOJ and quite frankly the FBI, I think we're going to have to bring in an outsider, somebody that's not an institutionalist, because between some of the things that Bill Barr's done, and I don't want to be totally negative on him. I think he's done a lot of good things by ending the bogus Mueller investigation. But if you want to see real reform, either at the FBI or the DOJ, you can't have people that are more loyal to an institution than the Constitution. And I don't know if we're ever going to see real reform and real transparency and real accountability in some of these major institutions until you bring in outsiders.
I'm not going to make you feel any more confident of that by showing you really quickly on the screen here who the potential AG picks are according to the Biden transition team. We got Sally Yates, Doug Jones, Merrick Garland. None of them are going to go in there and take a chainsaw to the load-bearing walls of the DOJ under Biden. I can assure everybody of that one. Sally Yates, a Russia collusion truther, no less.
That's right.
Ned, I'm glad you're on my team for the next 4 years. Come with me, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Buck.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? We have to deal with this continued nonsense from these people in the Biden administration, that there's no questions that we have to answer here. There's nothing to see, sure. It's almost time for a daily roundup of left-wing lunacy. The buckshot comes up next. Black Rifle Coffee Company is a veteran-owned company that serves premium coffee to people who love America. Veteran CEO and founder Evan Hafer spent over 7 years on the ground overseas with U.S. Special Forces and as a CIA contractor. Evan even modified his gun trucks during the invasion of Iraq to grind coffee anywhere. There's nothing better than starting your day with America's coffee. Make your holidays better by giving the gift of Black Rifle Coffee. Go to blackriflecoffee.com/buck today. You can check out the best coffee in America. And this coffee makes your holiday shopping easy because they've got personalized bundles, gift subscriptions to the coffee club, gift cards, and a whole lot of premium coffee apparel and gear. Make your holidays better with Black Rifle Coffee. Just go to blackriflecoffee.com/buck. That'll get you 20% off coffee, apparel, and gear, as well as 20% off your first month of the coffee club. Don't wait. Take action today. blackriflecoffee.com/buck. Use that code to get 20% off your first month of the coffee club. They've got great gear, great coffee. It's an all-American company. New York City restaurants push back against Governor Cuomo, and the fight over who should be first to get vaccinated is just getting started. It's time for some buckshot. Governor Cuomo likes to have press conferences where he waxes philosophical about what a great job he's done on COVID. He has actually done a horrible job on COVID. But some people are going beyond just the necessary mockery of this idiot tyrant that is the governor, who is the governor of New York, to saying that no, they want there to be consequences for him personally, as he has decided to continue with this absurd and unscientific ban on indoor dining in New York City. He has said the following, or rather those restaurants have said that New York City restaurants are banding together to get rid of Cuomo from dining in their establishments. That's right, they don't want Cuomo to come eat at their restaurants. I think it sounds good to me. He's waging a one-man war on the New York City restaurant industry, and for what? For a 1.7% COVID positivity rate that they're not even certain is the accurate number? But all the other spread that's going on in places that they can't control. So they figure, well, let's just shut down. Well, it's worth it to put tens of thousands of people out of work, to destroy thousands of businesses across the city of New York right before Christmas, no less. Because maybe we'll slow down some cases, not even really stop them, slow them down, slow it. That's what they told us, 15 days to slow the spread. It's disgusting. CUOMO was quoted. He said the restaurants were quoted about CUOMO here saying he can eat at some roadside diner outside of Albany, but he will not be served anywhere in New York City, known universally as the world's greatest dining destination. If he has to use a restaurant, he could go relieve himself on the street corner, according to a bar owner, Larry Barrett. Now, I don't know if this is going to hold. I'm sure that they will probably relent on this in time, but it does at least give you some sense of the outrage that people are feeling here from these dictates from dimwits, and that's what we're all suffering from right now. TULSI on vaccines. I thought this was particularly interesting. Tulsi Gabbard, who's one of the more likable, prominent national-level Democrats out there, still a leftist, don't get me wrong, but something about her is just more acceptable. Perhaps it's her military service or willingness to talk to the other side in politics, but Tulsi doesn't bother me nearly as much as a lot of the other Democrats do. And she pointed out that why are people like AOC, young, healthy government employees, getting the vaccine before the elderly? Play it.
Heartless, arrogant, unelected CDC bureaucrats have decided that the lives of elderly Americans just don't count. Now, for months, the CDC has been telling us that the elderly are the most vulnerable. But now they are recommending that 100 million so-called essential workers, which means healthy people working at everything from liquor stores to telephone companies, that they can get the vaccine before our grandparents can. That members of Congress like me, we can get the vaccine before at-risk seniors can. People like my aunt, who is imprisoned in her own home because of the danger that if she catches the disease, she could die. This is immoral and bad health policy. I had planned to take the vaccine, but will now stand in solidarity with our seniors by not doing so until they can. I urge my colleagues in Congress who are under the age of 65 and healthy to join me.
Yeah. Taking a stand. I agree with her. I think that's the right move. Shows that there are Democrats who do have principles on some things. It is possible. And she's right. Age is by far the biggest indicator of risk from this disease. Essential employees now are all going to be getting this. Speaking of COVID restrictions, Saturday Night Live got a waiver so that they could have a live audience in studio. Why? Because they need people to laugh at them recycling the same anti-Trump jokes every night. They're not even funny, but that's what they do over there. The show is a catastrophe. I've seen high school plays that are better written and wittier and more intelligent than what you see on SNL on a regular basis. But they were hugging each other on stage over the weekend, and one conservative commentator, Carol Roth, pointed out, just to be clear, this is essential, but small businesses and their employees throughout New York City are not. So they can all gather and hug, no masks on stage, because it's SNL, and it's oh so important to have that comedy show, Democrat propaganda, on the air. Yeah, you don't say. But it turns out that there's even more hypocrisy and nonsense with this than we ever anticipated. We're going to continue to deal with it. We're going to continue to fight against it, and we will continue to hold the line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly comes up next. Shields high.